Grew. This will be the Unit 4 hearing for the We the People National Finals. In a moment, I will have the judges introduce themselves, followed by the students, and then we will begin the hearing. Students will deliver a 4-minute prepared statement, followed by 8 minutes of judges' questions. My microphone will be muted. During the hearing, I will be holding up 1 minute and time is up signs. I suggest that you use gallery view rather than speaker view. At the conclusion of the hearing, judges will give brief feedback to teams, and then we will conclude. Judges, go ahead and introduce yourselves.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Robert Dyan. I teach American government at the University of Evansville.
Sorry about that. My name is Zach Eastburn. I'm an attorney in Madison, Wisconsin.
And I'm Tom Tinder, and I'm an attorney in Charleston, West Virginia.
Good afternoon, judges. My name is Max Rock. Outside of We the People, I am the treasurer for our school's National Honor Society, and I also compete in tennis, basketball, and baseball. This fall, I will be attending the Barrett Honors College at Arizona State University to study aerospace engineering.
Good afternoon, judges. My name is Hannah Welko. Outside of We the People, I was the captain of the girls' varsity golf team for 3 years. In the fall, I'm hoping to attend college to study veterinary medicine.
I am Chase Corman. Outside of We the People, I'm the captain of the Incline robotics team. In the fall, I plan to attend the New College of Humanities in London for political science.
Terrific, fine group. We're eager to hear what you have to say about question 2, which has to do with legislative oversight, and I'll read it to you. Members of Congress are not only legislators, but they, quote, are also inquisitorial and should meet frequently to inspect the conduct of the public officers. How effectively do you believe Congress has used its investigatory power? Explain the differences, if any, between Congress's power to investigate and the power of oversight. Which power, in your opinion, is more significant? And finally, how effectively do you believe Congress has used its oversight powers? You may begin.
Former Congressman Bob Barr stated, "It is high time for some congressional oversight backbone." The framers assumed that Congress would continue to demonstrate and execute the power of investigation as the House of Commons did in England before them.
Supreme Court Justice James Wilson called the members of the Commons Grand Inquisitors of the realm and hoped Congress would follow in their footsteps and continue this belief.
Constitutional Convention delegate Robert Morris of Pennsylvania asked Congress to conduct their first investigation in 1790 to clear him of accusations of mishandling the country's finances. The power of oversight and investigation have only grown and expanded since then, and now it functions as one of Congress's most important roles.
Powers of oversight and investigation appear to be similar on the surface. However, they are entirely different. In oversight, Congress forms committees and commissions to overlook internal and external affairs. Often they will question witnesses about the workings of a particular law or request receipts of budget expenditure. One way Congress utilizes this power is to solidify its management of budgets and the power of the purse.
In contrast, the power of investigation commonly stems from issues found through oversight. When a problem is discovered, it is reported to the Government Accountability Office. The GAO then puts together a bipartisan or nonpartisan commission to investigate the issue found. This includes probing agencies and officers, as well as issuing subpoenas to question witnesses. Then, once a report is created, it is delivered to the agency in question, who gets to voice a rebuttal, which the GAO may counter-argue. This is when the full report is returned to the original committee in Congress which requested it, who may use the report to pass legislation as needed. This process can be seen in the investigations of the Teapot Dome scandal, the Iran-Contra affair, and the 9/11 terrorist attacks.
We believe that oversight is the more significant ability of Congress, as without oversight, Congress would have less knowledge of when and where to launch an investigation. As stated by Justice John Harlan, the scope of Congress's power of inquiry is as penetrating, as far-reaching as the power to enact and appropriate funds under the Constitution.
There are 3 types of oversight abilities: programmatic, making sure agencies are being efficient and functioning according to their statutory mission; political, used to verify or deny statements made by the government and the public; and institutional, which checks the power of the president and ensures the effective enforcement of laws passed by Congress.
Although the power of congressional oversight is never directly stated in the Constitution, it is heavily implied that in Article 1, Section 8, is under Congress's broad authority to make all laws which shall be necessary and proper for carrying into execution all other powers vested by this Constitution in the government of the United States, department, or officer. And Congress has used this oversight power effectively. According to the GAO, there are over 50,000 examples of oversight recorded.
We believe the ability for Congress to issue subpoenas has greatly improved their ability to effectively utilize investigatory and oversight powers. Oversight has helped Congress ensure that their budget is being used effectively and in the ways that they authorize. This helps the well-being of the people and of the United States as a whole. Oversight is the most effective way of making sure money and policy are being responsibly enforced and utilized, as there are no gaps in communication.
Congressional investigation and oversight are two important powers of Congress that help to maintain the power balance in the federal government. It is the steps that Congress takes in order to ensure that the branches are efficient and the public remains aware. It provides the legislative branch with an opportunity to inspect, examine, review, and check the executive branch and its agencies. Thank you.
Thank you. You mentioned subpoenas, but I'd like to dig a little bit deeper if we can. What happens if the legislative branch finds that the bureaucracy is not working with them harmoniously? What kind of tools does the Congress have to try to get better behavior from the bureaucracy? Beyond
When somebody or a document is subpoenaed, they are required to show up and required to provide those documents in court. They still withhold their Fifth Amendment rights if it is a witness being subpoenaed, which involves not having to say anything and the right to remain silent. But if they do not show up to the court or do not show up as requested, they can be held in contempt of Congress and be issued either fines or civil and criminal penalties.
And established in the 1927 case, McDrane v. Daugherty, the idea is that Congress has this power of oversight under the Constitution. Congress has the investigative power under a legislative purpose, and therefore they can issue as subpoenas as stated in Watkins v. United States in 1957.
Okay, thank you.
So I understand from your opening statement that the power to investigate is fairly broad, and you mentioned legislative purpose. Are there things that Congress cannot investigate and relatedly should not investigate, and why?
No, there is no length to which Congress cannot perform an investigation. The entire purpose of the power is to be a check on just about everything in government, especially the things that regularly wouldn't have checks, such as intelligence agencies like the CIA and the NSA.
So following up on that, you said oversight was the more important or the more significant. Why didn't you say investigations, the investigative power, since you just said that it has no length, it has no restrictions on it? Tell me why.
We believe that oversight leads to investigation. And so without these oversights and without looking into how laws and how policies passed by Congress are being enforced, we wouldn't have anything to go and investigate, and we wouldn't have anything to go and look into.
And examples of this can be found in the CIA, in the investigation about personal security, about if the government was violating people's security by investigating, by illegally tampering with their mail. And as a result of an oversight, it prompted investigation, which led to the creation of the FISA.
One of the things you mentioned was institutional checks, and so the Congress can check the executive. That's at least the original design. I think that was Madisonian, the idea that ambition would counteract ambition and people would stick up for their institution. But does that work that way now in the 21st century, or have we strayed from that sort of institutional approach?
I believe it has worked. We can watch and see through Supreme Court cases throughout American history, starting with Aaron v. Burr, or Burr v. United States, in which the Supreme Court ruled that it was constitutional for Congress to request personal documents. And it stated that a president is virtually the same standing as an individual when discussing subpoenas. And this led all the way to the Watergate Convention and the Watergate scandal, in which US v. Nixon stated that the president wasn't immune to executive privilege, or didn't hold executive privilege, and was immune to subpoenas and was required to hand over information. And this leads all the way up to Trump v. Mazars and Trump v. Vance, which authorized the Congress to view and to subpoena former President Trump's former tax returns and financial records.
This also leads up to the idea of, during former President Trump's first impeachment, the investigation into the Ukrainian involvement.
So I understand that the investigation power and maybe oversight to an extent, it acts as a check on the executive branch and agencies. But I think there's an argument that can be made that really the executive agencies are encroaching on the legislative branch in their function and their ability to make law, as stated in Article 1, Section 8. Is the existence of the administrative state a violation of the separation of powers?
I don't believe that the existence of the administrative state is a violation of separation of powers. I believe that with the ability to investigate and the proper utilization of the ability to investigate and oversee the executive branch, and for the executive branch to cooperate with these investigations, it allows for the legislative branch to have a check back on the encroachment that we see the executive branch withholding within the legislative branch.
And this is seen within the necessary and proper clauses of Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, in that Congress has the implied power of investigation and is capable of checking the other branches as it is necessary and proper.
Has Congress given up or any of its powers to the executive branch and the judicial branch, or has it had any powers taken away, so to speak, by those two other branches?
There is the idea that political parties are causing an extreme lack in investigations. For example, one parties might not want to sponsor an investigation. For example, during the Bush administration, where the House was run by a Democratic Senate, there was almost virtually no investigations called, versus whenever a Republican candidate came in the next presidency, and there were over 1,000 subpoenas issued.
In fact, evidence shows that if you have a condition of divided government, you have more scrutiny. So it would seem then, I think what I'm following is that you're saying that when the branches are controlled by two different parties and partisanship drives investigations, that is a better outcome as opposed to a worse outcome. Is that an argument in favor of partisanship?
Well, the idea of it is that gridlock within the parties, because of extreme partisanship, is causing things to slow down and not move as effectively as it should be. Thomas Jefferson said delay is preferable to error. However, in this extreme state of partisanship, it is no longer becoming effective if it's no longer moving at all.
Do you think, what is the role, do you think that the confirmation hearings that exist now for that the legislature does over the executive appointments is an effective tool of oversight?
I think in idea, it is effective. The ability for Congress and the House of Representatives to be able to check and be able to limit who may or may not be in, for example, the president's cabinet or heads of different departments. I believe this is a great example of how, not just through investigations, but how the legislative branch holds a check on the executive branch.
Thank you.
Right, thanks very much. Well, this was expertly done. A very thorough, solid, well-researched presentation. I thought it was a very sophisticated comment to make that from above, oversight and investigatory powers sort of seem similar, but they're not. And I thought that when you said oversight can lead to investigations, that was a sophisticated insight. I appreciated your use of examples. I appreciated you spelling out programmatic and political and institutional forms of oversight. During the question and answer, I think there were a couple times where the answers furnished weren't exactly a dead-on response to the question posed. And it's interesting because, for example, the first question I asked, I think could have led to an answer that talked about partisanship. Later, partisanship came up in response to a different question. So you eventually got to all of the things that needed to be said, and you clearly had a strong understanding of the questions that were at issue. But sometimes the direct response to a direct question might have been a little better placed. But by the time the 8-minute segment was over, you had covered the waterfront and really displayed a strong understanding of all the dimensions of this. So I thought it was a good, I thought it was a very good presentation. You have gone from Bob Barr at the beginning to Thomas Jefferson at the end. So if you can compare those two fellows in the same presentation, I'd say you've covered the waterfront. Well done.
Yeah, so just to echo a lot of that, I agree. I think that the opening statement was very comprehensive. You had a very sort of not technical, but a detailed walkthrough of the reporting of the step-by-step of the investigation process. When you go through the GAO and the subpoena, and then there's the investigation, which can in turn inform oversight. And I thought that was it was a tricky thing to do well, in that something like that in concept could be dry or too detailed, but you did it in a way that was very clean and concise, and it was a good form of sort of explaining your point, and that's a difficult thing to do. So hats off to you for doing that well. I agree. I think you had some good uses of examples that we hadn't heard before. Good references to the Constitution, the Article 1, Section 8, necessary and proper, which I think is an important thing to hit on here. You staked a clear position on which of the two related powers are more important, that being oversight, and also one thing that I think would be important maybe is just some of the questions that I asked, they kind of implicate some pretty hot topic type of points of disagreement within constitutional circles. Are agencies encroaching on the legislature? That the thing about this is that there is no right answer, right? You're allowed to say whatever you want as long as you support it. And someone gave a strong answer saying no, there's not encroachment, but it would have been nice maybe to see kind of the counter to that, just to say, the Constitution gives Congress the ability to make law. It doesn't say anything about the executive branch doing a quasi function there. So there is sort of a counterpoint there. But others of your answers were really, I think, strong. This idea of gridlock in Congress, and I think you cited was it Jefferson? I forget who it was. That delay is preferable to error, and then you made a point about that I thought was like a good way of weaving in that quote to make it effective and relevant to whatever you were to your argument. So that was a good and not an easy thing to do. So again, hats off to you on that. Overall, again, a very thorough presentation, and you covered a lot of topics, and so I appreciate that.
Very quickly, I think it was a very well done presentation. I enjoyed your initial 4-minute response to those questions in the subpoints. I liked you start out with the historical basis of the House of Commons. That was a nice touch. And then as you gave us that information about how the GAO and reporting to Congress, investigative, and then the oversight. There's been 50,000 reports. That was an interesting tidbit that we hadn't heard before. And as you might imagine, with the other classes, some have taken investigative powers as being more important or more significant, and others have taken oversight. And of the ones that have taken oversight, I thought that you did a very good job of explaining why you think it is more significant or more important, and with your examples and so forth. I do want to remind you that one of the big arguments or the big issues, so to speak, is the president's use of executive orders and how that has impacts as it relates to legislative powers and so forth. But overall, I thought you did a very good job. Congratulations to you. You are impressive individuals with a lot of expertise and knowledge, and it sounds like you have great plans for your future. And please make sure that in your future, you continue to be a good citizen and use your knowledge and leadership skills as it relates to all the other activities that you're going to be involved in, including hopefully some civic education activities in the decades to come. Good luck to you and congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for your time.